Hello, everybody. Good evening and happy Big Wednesday. This is another episode of Extra Credits Book Club podcast. This week we're talking about more of Killing Floor by Michelle.
Yes, indeed. Another 8 whole chapters.
Yes. And if you missed last episode, the episode is on YouTube now, but the Cliff's Notes is Jack Reacher is a military policeman, former military policeman. Made his way through Georgia, or stopped in Georgia, instantly got arrested. And now he's been trying to figure out why he's been arrested, essentially.
Mm-hmm. And he just spent a fun weekend in prison with another man named Paul Hubble,
His first
who's
name Paul.
yeah. I don't know how they never say it. They mention it maybe one time.
Yeah.
But
Go ahead.
he basically, I'm trying to remember. So, okay, after he goes to prison for the weekend, there's an attempt on his life. And then he gets out of prison after the weekend. And the lady cop that he has a crush on picks him up. And he's trying to get out of Georgia as quickly as possible.
Right.
Because he doesn't want to have anything to do with this murder investigation. He wants to get as far away from it as possible.
Yeah.
But first, he wants to have a lunch date before he gets out of town with the nice lady cop named Roscoe, who's always wearing, he always describes her with like what she's wearing, but it's always like these really specific descriptions of like her crisp uniform shirts and like her nice cotton shirts. Like I've never been so aware of like the structure and fabric of a person's shirt before. Like it's enough that it's like weirdly noticeable.
It is weird because he keeps talking about what this woman is wearing, even though she's a police officer, and they wear something very specific every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, he wants out of Georgia because he's like, this place fucking sucks. This place has nothing for me except for being arrested for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
And he also wants to continue his little pilgrimage to find Muddy Waters or whatever the blues music.
Blind Blake.
Yeah.
Does he care anymore though?
At that point, he still did.
Okay.
It was like
the whole thing just seems so random. Like that's the reason.
Find out about Blind Blake, and then I'm out of here.
Like why?
But we get introduced to like more of the town. In this chapter, when he's like wandering around town.
Yeah, he has like time to kill before his lunch date, and he ends up going to a cafe by himself, I think.
Yeah,
and
also
he
get a haircut.
Right. I think he's getting coffee and a newspaper, and he is confronted with this like pale, luminous vampire of a woman. And everyone around him is like, that's Mrs. Kleiner. Don't you know who Mrs. Kleiner is? And we're like introduced to this family who are very mysterious. And the guy at the diner is like, she's probably dying of the consumption. Like, we don't know for sure, but just look at her.
Right. They're like,
and he yeah, he describes her as something grown in a closet. and a rare orchid. So just gives me big, like, willowy, laudanum addicted widow vibes.
Yeah, but also like abused spouse energy too,
Yeah, true.
because a truck pulls up and it's like revs in the street, and then she's like, "I have to go now."
Yeah.
Then she like
Coughs into her
shambles.
handkerchief.
Yeah, she shambles away,
Yeah.
and then he goes to get his hair cut, and he hangs out with like the barber from Coming to America.
Mm.
And he's like, "Hey, you've been around. You're old and you're black. Do you happen to know Blind Blake?" And they're like, "Well, I don't know about no Blind Blake, but my partner here, he'd been around forever. He may know him." And then it's this weird, like, I wrote down in my notes, Abbott and Costello perform "I Think I Heard Blind Blake."
Yeah, it's the most old guy conversation of
Yeah.
all time. Like, my sister used to know him. I think she actually sang with him.
Yeah, and the whole time Reacher's just like, "So, is that a yes?
Mhm.
What are we like? What's the over under on this, fellas?" He never really gets an answer.
No. And I don't know. I'm still not certain about why he cares so much. But I mean, why does anybody care about anything really? Like,
Honestly, I think
he's just a
that,
curious boy.
yeah, I think this portion of the story, him looking like going on his little Blind Blake pilgrimage, is literally just to put Reacher in Georgia.
Mhm.
There's no other reason for it other than he needs to be in Georgia for this story to happen.
Yeah, true. Then he finally gets to go on his lunch date. But then Roscoe's like, another body's been found by the warehouses.
Right.
And also, I have to say, like, the voice he uses for Roscoe, like, I'm not gonna go so far as to say that it's insulting, but it is a little sus. Like, it's an old guy
Yeah.
trying to do a young woman's voice, a young-ish woman's voice. And it ends up being like, "Well, Jack,
Yeah.
okay." Like, she just sounds like she's never made a decision in her life with the way
Yeah.
that her voice is being portrayed, and I feel like it does her a disservice because she's a smart, capable lady who's doing her best, but she's
Seemingly.
just always like, "Jack."
Like she's presented as a smart, capable woman, but she's done nothing to make us believe it. So far, her sole purpose has been looking for who, like, going on the computer and looking at who's been killed by, the original body that they found, looking at the computer for whoever that was, and then doing whatever Jack asked her to do.
Yeah. And, like, the way that they interact and the way that he's immediately so obsessed with her, it makes me think that she's either gonna be involved with this 10-person conspiracy that they're trying to solve, or she's gonna die. I just don't see a good outcome for her.
No, no. Uh, big damsel in distress, in like laying in wait kind of energy.
Yeah, that's true, and it's like anytime a crisis happens, she's a mess immediately. She starts crying, or she's, like, very, like, ashen-faced, and she's always looking to Jack to tell her what to do, and I just have a hard time believing that, like, a woman who is a police officer would immediately fall to pieces anytime a crisis happens. I guess it's a small town, so maybe that plays into it. Like, who knows how
True,
many murders have happened before this? But still,
but
sometimes the
also
most depraved shit happens in small towns.
it's very weird. But
Mhm.
anyway, I forget. Does Reacher go with her? She's like, oh, there's another body. I think he
Yeah,
goes
they go
with
on a
her.
morgue field trip. Mhm.
Yeah, and he finds out that the second corpse is his brother.
Yeah, and he was shot a lot.
Many times.
And he was there the whole time, even when they found the first body, but nobody found him at first. And it was because he had been there for 3 days getting his face eaten up by rats, which is why Jack doesn't recognize the body, or he doesn't see the body, does he? They just go to talk with the morgue doctor, and then the fax comes in
Right.
that shows, like, who's dead.
Yeah. And like it's this weird like Jack is clearly like Reacher's upset that his brother's dead, but at the same time he's like I didn't really know him that well.
Well, I thought they were pretty close. Like,
He says that. He's like we used to be really close and then he like in the next chapter he talks about the relationship him and his brother had and I'm like you guys weren't close at all.
but, like,
That's
what's close to him? Like, it seems like for Jack, closeness is just, like, proximity. Like, I don't think he has that many, like, deep interpersonal relationships, but
yeah.
he had a foundation of loyalty with his brother that I don't know that he had with many people.
Yeah. And it was like there was like that bond because
Mhm.
they didn't really separate until his parents died and Reacher left.
Yeah, and they haven't spoken in 7 years
Right.
since their mom's funeral.
Something like that.
Mhm.
And the way he talks about his brother is very distant.
Mhm.
Like uh someone he kinda knows. Very strange.
Ye Yeah, like, it seems like they never really had meaningful connections, they just kind of looked out for one another. But it seems like they were very similar with how they both ended up working in military intelligence, but maybe that doesn't mean much besides the fact that they just grew up in various army bases and their whole lives were in the military.
Oh, I don't think Reacher worked in military intelligence. He was a policeman.
Right. That's right.
But his brother went on for into intelligence.
Mhm.
Um, and then
But it is a
he Reacher like curveballs this tragedy. I hesitate to even call it a tragedy because he's not really busted up about it. He's just kind of mad about it.
Yeah, and he's like, "This is a wild coincidence."
Yeah, he's like, first of all, sucks that my brother's dead. Second of all,
Mhm.
why was he here?
Mhm.
What is he doing? Third of all, I bet I can use this to have sex with Ron.
No, he doesn't. Well, he kind of does.
He kind of does. Because then he has sex with Roscoe.
Well, they go to Hubble's wife's house first. There's some things happen first before. It's
I
not like he finds out, he's like, "I'm, like, really sad, babe, like,
Yeah, true. True.
can you just, like, get naked for a little bit, help me forget."
He like these chapter 10, 11, no. Chapter 12 and 13 are the ones that I really struggled with because my like proverbial eyes kept glazing over because it was just Reacher and Finley talking at each other.
Yeah.
What?
Well,
Go ahead.
they go see Hubble's wife, because they find out that Hubble hired his brother,
Right.
and that's why he was there. So they need to go talk to Hubble ASAP.
Yeah.
So Jack and Roscoe drive over to his house, and they meet his wife, Charlotte. Charlotte? Yeah. But she
Yeah.
goes by Charlie. So that's all that matters. And they kind of have this like afternoon tea and awkward conversation being like, so like, is he coming home? Like, is he like, she just kind of entertains them for a while. But
Yeah.
the most interesting part about this scene was just how uncomfortable Jack was being in a house. He's like, I've lived for 36 years. I've never lived in a house. He doesn't know what to do with them. He gets socially awkward. He like doesn't know how to move his body or where to
Yeah.
sit or what to touch, and he's just like,
Yeah, he's doing the like hands out like hello, thank you for inviting me into your home.
yeah. And then he keeps comparing like the way that he describes how Charlie looks. He's like, she was a handsome woman, but nothing next to Roscoe. And then goes into this other huge description of how amazing Roscoe's eyes are and how crisp her soft cotton shirt is. And like,
Yeah.
then she's sitting next to him on the couch and she touches his leg and he like spirals out of control.
Right. But there's also a moment where I was like, okay, Reacher, a little unnecessary. When he's talking about Charlie, and he's like, 140 years ago, she would have been a slave owner.
Yeah, she would have owned slaves. She's the type of woman who just gives off plantation
Yes.
mistress vibes. And it's like,
I was
okay.
like, okay, seems rude, but you're probably not wrong.
Yeah, true.
It is Georgia, and she is white and rich.
Yeah. But he like when Roscoe touches his leg, he like goes through this mental Rolodex of every interaction they've had leading up to that point. And
Yeah.
he's like the wink.
And it's
The
not
way
even
she
like
picked me up from prison.
like before it was like, do you think she likes me? Maybe. Maybe she does. But this one he was like, oh yeah, the wink. That was it. Okay. She picked me up from prison. No, normal people don't do that. I think we're in, boys. And it's just like, dog, you've been in. What do you mean? Like you're a giant and a stranger. Like that's drugs to small towns. Like a handsome stranger pulling into town. Come on.
I mean, I guess.
Also, he's like 6'7".
Yeah, true. It's just I don't know, the way that he's described with like just how I don't know what it is. I just get such an ick from this whole like romance. Maybe it's because it's being read to me by the oldest
Yeah,
man in the
it's
world.
a very old man who's reading it
I
because he's
think
only like 36.
I know, but he might as well be 87 with the way that this book's being read. And I love it all the time, except for when it's like, it was a fabulous first kiss, and then immediately be like, we were a frenzied animal, like fiasco on the floor. And I'm
I'm
just
just
like, Dick,
I'm
please.
just grateful that Lee Child spared us those sex scenes because that would mean
Yeah,
that
but
Dick Hill had to read them.
yeah, true. And at first, like, because they leave Charlie's house and she's like, will you like stay with me while you're here? He's like, yes. And they go and they just start immediately making out. And like, it's leading up to the part where you know they're going to fuck. And I'm like, oh, how much detail are we going to get? Please, not that much. Let's do a nice little fade to black here. Please, please.
Yeah, and they do. Uh, and then she like after they do it, she's like, "Woo, that was fun." And he's like, yeah, but I'm leaving soon, so thanks. And she's
Well,
like,
no, he's
oh yeah, he starts talking about how he'd be like, man, it's a shame that I'm leaving, so because I'd fancy being here all the time. And then she's like,
she's
you're right. I should chain you to my bed and
well,
keep you
he's
here
like
forever.
it goes so the extra mile immediately. Cause she's like, do you still want to stay here? Like, do you want to go get a hotel? He was like, you'd have to chase me out with a shotgun at this point. And she was like, oh, well, I wouldn't do that, but like, I would get handcuffs and I would chain you to my bed and keep you here forever. And he's like, Jesus.
Yeah. And he's like, damn, that sounds nice. And I was like, no, Reacher, get out of there. Get out.
Yeah. And then, like, the narrator, Dick Hill, saying this in his woman voice made me very uncomfortable. And then
Because
she goes to work.
I'm on a personal level, I'm struggling because when I'm listening to this book, in my mind's eye, I'm struggling to imagine what Jack Reacher looks like, and my mind is at odds because I see Tom Cruise, and then I also see the guy who's playing him in the new show on Prime, and they're clash. Like I see a blonde, 6'5" Tom Cruise, and it's like creating like my brain's dividing by zero. It can't be done, and it's taking me out of a lot. And I hear this old man's voice. Like, who is this man?
I just picture him as an old man. And I can't it's like old Tom Cruise. And so
Yeah,
the whole thing is just like, ugh, stop.
which isn't fair to Jack Reacher because he's neither old or Tom Cruise.
That's true. But it's like there's something about the way that Jack Reacher's internal monologue goes that makes me like Tom Cruise is way cooler as Jack Reacher than the Jack Reacher in this book. Like the Jack Reacher in this book isn't very cool. But
Yeah,
that's probably because we're getting the story told from his perspective.
and
And because he's
also,
just so obsessed with Roscoe. That's all he thinks about.
right. Uh, not only is Tom Cruise cooler, but this is the first time he's ever written a Jack Reacher.
Well, true.
So it might be that he hasn't figured out what makes him cool yet. Which is saying
Yeah.
very little. And when he does, it's real bitchy.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you guys
But
haven't, watch the first Jack Reacher.
there's two? Oh.
Real good. And they're doing a TV show on Prime that's just called
That's right.
Reacher.
With Hank from Titans.
Yeah, Alan Richards.
That's his name.
Yeah,
He looks like a Hank, you know? But Roscoe leaves for work after that. They sleep, I think. Um, but then she leaves him a note the next morning. And she's like, early lunch?
yeah,
Leave Hubble to Finley. And then she signs it XXXXXXXXX and then doodles a little handcuff drawing, which is a bit of a
right,
creepy touch that
right.
made me a little
Red
nervous.
red flag number 2.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
like, I don't trust this hoe. This hoe is untrustworthy.
and then they go out for their lunch, and Reacher gets hung up on looking for a waitress with, because when he gets there, like as soon as he gets there, Roscoe's like, "Oh my god, I have to go.
Yeah, she gets a page.
Go on in. I'll be back in a minute." And he's like, "Okay." And then he goes in, and it's like just pages of Reacher talking about this waitress with glasses. And my notes are like, why are you talking about this woman with glasses? Stop it!
Well, it's like an epiphany for him. But he also, before he goes through this whole thing of like comparing women, he has like his energy about, because Roscoe's like, our waitress is the one with glasses, so that's who you should talk to when you order me food. I'll be back soon. And he's looking at all the waitresses. He's like, I wouldn't have used glasses as the first point of differentiation between these two women. One of them's cuter, one of them's thinner, one of them has longer hair. And it very much gives me the energy of like when boomer men are like, I don't understand why these young women are cutting their hair so short to look like boys. But then he goes into this spiral about the glasses, because then he remembers that when he was in prison, Hubble was wearing glasses and Spivey asked which one of you is Hubble. And he was like, why would he want to know which one?
Yeah. Back. Sure, it'll come back at some point.
It'll happen.
Oh god. Discord froze. So I got none of what you said.
Oh, okay. Well, what was the last thing? I was just ranting about this glasses thing and how Spivey was like,
it was that he fought, like he made the connection that they were trying to kill Hubble in prison, but they didn't. They attacked him because Hubble's glasses got smashed.
and Jack was the one wearing the glasses that he stole from someone else. Yeah. It was very dumb. The whole thing was
it was like that reveal that like it's an important reveal for the story, but it was done in a way that's like, where are you going with this?
Mm-hmm.
I knew this was going to happen. My internet has been a precocious brat lately.
Well, we're so close to Mercury retrograde, so like it makes sense, you know?
Right.
Like on a scientific level.
Yeah. Whatever that means.
But I guess basically from this whole thing, Jack thinks that because Roscoe had to leave because she got paged, that it means Hubble must be dead.
Right.
And he thinks in his head, for sure, Hubble is dead. I'm not going to ask any questions about this. That's what happened.
Yeah.
And he tracks down Finley, I think.
Like, he bets the farm on assuming Hubble's dead.
Yeah, he goes right to his wife's house, doesn't he?
No. He...
Briefly, just for a moment,
Yeah,
and she's in hysterics. She's like, Hubble's missing. So he thinks this confirms it.
And he keeps talking about Hubble in the past tense, and she's like, why are you doing that? And he's like, well, he's dead for sure. And she's like, no, he's not. He can't be. We'll see.
I would sense it.
And then I think oh, that's what it was. He's like, I need to borrow your car.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take the Bentley. And then he goes to the police station, and then
Yeah, and
finds out,
Roscoe's there. She's like, it was horrible. She like throws herself at him. I'm
and he
like,
finds out he was
girl.
dead ass wrong. That it was
Yeah.
the Fatso police chief Morrison that got done up
Mm-hmm.
in a similar manner to what Hubble was afraid was going to happen to him. Literally
Mm-hmm.
nailed to the wall. An impressive feat considering how fat Jack seems to think this man is. Uh, Testiculars cut off, and the wife made to eat them.
Mm-hmm. And she was killed as well.
Yeah. And everybody is just beside themselves with the death, even though everybody kind of hated this guy.
Yeah, no one liked him.
He
And
seemed like an
Jack's,
asshole.
yeah, he was the one who was trying so hard to be like, it was definitely you at the crime scene. I'm gonna prove it and I'm gonna
Right. Which is
shit on your
also,
grave.
yeah, and that's when Reacher was like, oh, that's why that fat fuck said I was at the crime scene. He saw my brother. Easy
Mm-hmm.
mistake to make.
Yeah. And he's trying to suss out if, like, he has a conversation with Finley after, and he's trying to figure out if Finley is going to benefit from the chief dying or the commissioner dying.
Right.
And he's like, so are you getting, he's like really aggressively asking Finley, he's like, are you getting promoted to like police chief? And he's like, no, there's no way. And he basically tells his whole sob story about his 20-year career working towards how he was just going to retire with his wife and live in a cottage somewhere. And then he finally gets to the day where he's going to retire and his wife's like, actually, like, I don't really like you that much. And they get divorced and he falls into a depression spiral. She's like, if I have to spend every day with you for the next 20 years, I am going to murder myself.
Right. I remember hearing that and being like, damn, okay.
It's brutal.
That
So
seems
unnecessary.
a bit rude. But
Yeah.
this whole chapter 12, is entirely Finley telling Reacher his backstory, and me listening to it going, hey, I don't know that I heard any of it. Like, my eyes were fully glazed over.
Yeah, I had to listen to it like 3 times in order for it to really take.
All I remember is that that they were talking about the crime scene, and Finley notes that the people who did it came prepared. Like, they brought all their own tools. They brought like booties, the kind, those like they're like hairnets, but you put them over your shoes that they wear for on crime scenes. He also said they probably brought those like nylon, those plastic zip-up suits that butchers wear on the killing floor. They did it. They said the title of the book.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, but I was like, okay. I mean, that's not like that's not much of a revelation, because all of the people who nailed a man to a wall, cut off his balls, killed him, and then made his wife eat those balls and then kill her. They knew it was going to be messy, so they just were prepared.
Yeah.
I think it was just a way for the child to say killing floor.
Yeah, true. I think they don't know about the wife having to eat
Not yet.
his balls yet, because that's how Jack kind of reveals to Finley after he determines that he's trustworthy. He's like, I can only trust you and Roscoe. Finley's like, why Roscoe?
Yeah. That man
He's like,
inside
don't
of
worry about it.
Yeah,
Um,
because he's like, oh, by the way, where were the balls? Like, where were his testicles? I'm like, we haven't found them. Couldn't find him anywhere. And he's like, oh, that's because you haven't, like, you will. They just aren't in the house. Like, when they cut open the wife, you'll find him there.
mhm.
Because he remembered Hubble sobbing in prison about how he was afraid he was going to have his balls cut off and stuffed in his wife's mouth.
Mhm. Yeah, and he basically I think they go to the chief's house to look around a little bit more. And they learn that there was like a lake of blood. Like it's just very grim, the whole
Yeah,
thing, than the
it's
way it's described.
the
But
the gross. Yeah, it's just like a horrible crime scene that they really stretch it. Like it's not like it's a weird disconnect because it is a horrible grisly crime that is talked about as it is a like all of the characters are talking about it as if it's horrible, but when it's described, it's like it doesn't sound horrible.
I
Like
think we're
it's
just desensitized. I think true crime as a genre has ruined everybody.
good point.
But maybe at the time of the book's publication, it was like, oh my
Yeah,
God.
the shit was disgusting in 1997. But I
But
think this is the the bulk of chapter 12 and 13 is this whole sequence where they're talking about what happened, whose balls are where. Boy, this place looks gross. And also who is involved. Like if the chief was killed in a way that Hubble was afraid he was going to be killed, then that means that the chief is involved with this like secret conspiracy that something is going to happen on set,
right.
which is the full full stop all of the information we have about whatever this is.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like that we don't know anything except there's 10 of them, not including Hubble, and
Two people are dead so far.
two people are dead so far.
And I think we find out who the first dead guy is now. That his name's Sherman Stalls. But we don't know anything else about him besides his name because his fingerprints came back or something like that.
Yeah, and he
So
was a
we
truck
find out
driver.
that right, but we don't find that out until after they go on another morgue field
Right.
trip and talk to the doctor again. But I think Hubble hired Jack's brother as the investigator. But I don't really know how this first dead guy, Sherman Stalls, factors into everything. Like, why was he there?
I don't think we know yet.
Okay.
Uh,
And he must have been talking to the dead guy
yes.
or something. And they were both killed like around the same time, we think. And
We
I think this
just
basically,
don't know. Just don't know, damn it.
yeah, Jack basically is just confiding in Finley and telling him about everything Hubble told him in prison.
Yeah.
And then I think because we're into chapter 13 at this point, I think. Um,
And I think
and
that's when Finley he's like, okay, then we need to get um Hubble's family out of here. Like they're in danger because if Hubble's missing or dead, they're probably gonna come for them next. So we got to get him out of here. He's like, okay, I'll have my FBI homie come down here and we'll get them tucked away. And this is about when I started making notes about how there's not a lot of crime solving happening, and most of this book seems to be Jack Reacher sizing up the people that he interacts with.
Yeah. Like the Kleiner boy who he meets next
Right.
in the
Who's like,
parking lot.
you stay away from Roscoe, she's mine.
She's been waiting 5 years for me.
And Reacher's just like, shut up, punk!
Yeah,
Get
doesn't
out of
he go
here!
he goes for, like, a handshake, and then
Yeah.
Jack balls his hand up into a fist or something like
Well,
that?
they're
Instead of
going
I don't
for
really know
they're
how
going for the handshake,
Mhm.
and Reacher mentions the old military trick where right as you clasp it, like, you know, when you do the thing where you grip someone's hand and you really squeeze it,
Mhm.
you pull your hand back just enough so that you get them like this, and you just crush their knuckles. So he gets him with the old whoop, and then
Mhm.
just crushes this guy's hand. And then he's like, no fucking get lost, bitch!
Right. Super macho handshake off.
Yeah. And, like, the kid, he's like, "Ugh," runs away.
Mhm. It just sounds like such a piece of shit.
And I think this is when he goes back to
The station.
the station. I was gonna
I
say
think he
Charlie's house.
I think he meets the mayor first.
Oh yeah,
Because I think Finley needs time to get his FBI homie to
right.
come down to meet Hubble's family and get them out of there.
Mhm.
And the mayor Teal pulls up in his like white caddy, and it's described as looking like a Vegas whorehouse.
Yeah,
I've never had a car described that way, and it's
I know
very
exactly what it looks like then.
vivid. Yeah. But he's so eager to like close the books on this crime, like it's not being investigated beyond within the station house. He's like, obviously it was some random
Yeah,
who just got out of prison.
this is just a random murder.
Mhm.
And we thank you, great, you know, it's a great, we really appreciate all the help you've given us.
Oh yeah, he's like super old too, isn't he? Like
Yeah. And also, stay away from Roscoe.
yeah. He's like he's gonna run the police department himself. In a
Yeah,
way where it's like Finley's definitely gonna run the police department, but not get paid a manager's salary, and as someone who that happened to, I was really triggered by that.
yeah.
One time when I was
Finley,
housekeeping, I was hired as the assistant manager, and then the manager, who was a drunk, got fired. She the person who ran where I was working came in and was like, "I'm the manager now. You can be my assistant manager." And that meant that I was doing all the manager and assistant manager work on no pay increase. So I really felt for Finley.
yeah, fair. And, like, the dynamics of he's a black guy in the deep south.
Right.
Cool. He's never gonna have a chief of police in like a hee haw town. No, it's not happening. And he's like, I don't really want it,
Yeah.
and they won't give it to me. So they bring in the mayor to like run things in the interim, and he's clearly affiliated with this Shadow Moses group,
Mhm.
and they are acting accordingly. They are acting under the assumption that he is. So they're like keeping everyone except the holy trinity of Reacher, Roscoe, and Finley out of the loop.
Yeah. Like, he is interacting with Roscoe at the station before he leaves again, and they're being all cutesy, and he's, like, kissing
Oh,
her
it's
hair, and I'm
disgusting.
like, "Get out
Please
of here."
stop.
And then he's like, "Bring the handcuffs home," and I'm just like,
Yep,
"Stop,
stop.
stop." And I think the mayor introduces himself to Jack after he leaves, and he's
Yeah.
like, "It's a pity you're gonna be leaving soon."
Yeah. It's a real shame you're heading out on your way. Because
And he's
you've
like,
been
"I'm
real good.
not.
Yeah, he's like,
I'm
I'm not
actually
leaving.
hanging out for a bit." 'Cause he's determined now. He's all in on this case now that his brother's been murdered. He's like, "I gotta do it for him. I have to figure out who killed my brother."
Right.
So he's no longer trying to just pay a small pilgrimage to Blind Blake and then leave
Yeah.
shortly thereafter.
And then he's off to talk to Hubble's wife Charlie, where he's like, "Hey, they're sending somebody here. Come take you and the kids off to somewhere safe." And she's like, "Okay, but here, hold on a second. Before you do this, let me hire you." Like, for
Mhm.
what? She's like, "Find out what my husband is into." And he's like, "I'm already doing that." And she's like, "Great, then here's money. And keep the car."
Yeah, he's like, "I couldn't do it in good conscience because I'm 100% sure he's dead." And she's like, I would know." And his opinion of her changes around this time where he's like, "I made a mistake. I don't
Yeah.
actually think she's the type of woman who would have owned slaves 150 years ago. I actually think she's the kind of woman who would have been on the Oregon Trail."
Yeah.
Like a strong, fine-looking frontiers lady who is self-sufficient and strong. Like,
She she wouldn't have been living in the lap of luxury, making money off the backs of unpaid black people. She would be dead on her way to Montana.
yes, she would be eating children in the Donner Party.
Reacher needs to really update his analogy because none of them
Yeah.
are good.
No.
But then, like, Finley's FBI buddy shows up, a
Mhm.
man called Picard,
Mhm.
who is a giant black guy,
Mhm.
almost as tall, if not taller, than Reacher himself. And I think Reacher said he's got like 100 pounds on him.
Yeah.
So this guy
Reacher, who
is
is
like,
6'11".
yeah, Reacher, who's 7 foot tall and 250,000 pounds.
Of pure steel.
Yeah, and this guy is like barely fitting through door, just like, excuse me, pardon me, coming through. And he's like, "Yeah, I'll take these guys to a safe house, no problem." And he's like, "Cool, thanks."
Mhm.
And then Preacher just kind of gets in the Bentley that has been given to him,
Mhm.
and he's not even like, "Well, I guess I could use it since I'm here." He's just like, "Sick, thanks."
Yeah. Just had a connection with the Bentley, I guess.
And then he goes to Roscoe's place.
The prison.
Oh yeah, he
To
goes.
see Spivey.
Yeah, he goes. He's doing his little like, "Hey punk, you
Mhm.
want to tell me what happened when I was here?" And he doesn't get any answers, of course, because it's way too
No.
early in the book for that.
Yeah, and the prison bus shows up.
He's about to slice this fat bastard open, and a prison bus makes him like scurry away.
Yeah, and he's like he's so pleased about this break, and he's just like, and like disappears in a cloud of dust.
Yeah.
And I think he's like, "I wanna go take Roscoe out for a nice meal." He, like,
Yeah.
wants to go take her to a music festival.
Take her to a music festival.
in Alabama for the evening.
Yeah, he wants to go out. He's so sick of Georgia that
Yeah.
he's like, I'll drive 3 hours so that we can go to eat somewhere else.
Yeah.
And then they go, and we learn that apparently Reacher's got a thing for guitars and blues.
Yeah.
Because
Oh, well, they end up in a frenzy on the bedroom floor
I
before they go.
purposely left that out.
If I had to experience it, everyone does.
My note was literally, "Hey man, come on."
I know, I wrote in all capitals, "We get it."
Yeah,
And
and
he
I
writes about
my my next note is we take a break from our conspiracy to bring you this clip from Roadhouse because
Yeah.
it just turns into the movie Roadhouse for a minute. But like not any of the great parts of Roadhouse, like the parts of Roadhouse where it's just Patrick Swayze sitting in the bar like this while the bar's happening around him. Like it's none of the fights, it's none of him doing cool shit, and it's definitely not Sam Elliott. It's just a roadhouse in Alabama.
Yeah.
Jack Reacher tells us all about blues and guitars in a way that I could not give less of a shit about.
Yeah. The most appealing part of this scene was the description of the food. I was like, God, burgers sound really good right about now, actually. And then he and Roscoe start dancing, and he's like, Roscoe looked great. Her silky shirt was
Yeah, yeah,
damp.
yeah.
She
You could
wasn't
tell
wearing
she wasn't
anything
wearing any
underneath
of
it.
yeah.
Nipples like knives.
Oh,
That's not in there. But then, ew, he says by midnight we were juiced up and sloppy. And I was like, can we skip this part?
My note here is, okay, dude, we get it.
And then they go to a motel and have the most fucking boomer romance interaction of all time where he's like, you better get out of that shirt. I wouldn't want you to catch a chill. And she's like, I didn't know
Ah,
you have medical qualifications. And he's like, only in
wrap it up.
emergencies. And is it an emergency? And then he describes her as like provocative. And I'm like, this is the most
You're
middle-aged.
a grandpa.
But then they lie in bed after and they talk about their hopes and dreams, which was kind of nice.
But then
At
I don't
least
remember
that's
that.
what we don't get any of the conversation. That's essentially just like what he tells
Right.
us. We just lay in bed for hours talking about what's important.
And then they drive back home and find that someone had broken into Roscoe's house in the night
Yeah.
with the intention of nailing people to walls and removing testiculars.
And making other people eat them.
And Reacher was like, an interesting development.
Yeah.
And she's like, what does this mean? And he's like, it means they were going to cut off my nuts and make you eat them. And she's like, okay, I'll handle this well.
Okay.
And he takes it in stride because he's the coolest dude. And she does not.
No, she has a meltdown.
Yeah.
Oh, he has this moment where he's like, he like needs her to be convinced that he's a really tough, reliable, strong man with all of this military experience. So he does this thing where he describes in great detail the kind of stance that he adopts and the facial expression and the way that he's not blinking. And he's just standing there being like, I will fucking solve this. And he's just, I just picture him standing there, like not moving, just looking murdery and like not blinking for like 3 solid minutes. And she's
Nah.
like, okay.
This is helping.
What a tough, reliable guy.
What was the. Oh, it was. Yeah, there was something I did like. was he was like, it looks like it was 4 dudes came in here, ready to nail us to the wall, and so on. And he was like, I kind of wish I was here when they were here. She's like, why? They would have killed you. And he goes, no, we could have gotten some information. And she's like, what, you were going to kill 4 guys? And he goes, no, 3. The 4th one would have talked. And I was like, yes, this is the Jack Reacher I want.
Finally.
Finally.
Finding his stride. But he's like, pack a bag, sweetheart.
Yeah,
they're gonna play dumb. Yeah, pretend like they don't know that someone tried to like home intrude.
Yeah.
And I think they go to the diner and that he got arrested in, the only diner in town apparently, because they keep going back.
Yeah. Which Eno's. And Eno does not like Reacher. Doesn't like him one bit. Because he's been arrested in his diner.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, you're the only diner in town. Where else the fuck do you want me to eat?
Yeah, like there was probably significant property damage that happened when he was arrested. I understand.
Also, did we mention the Mexicans that turned up at the house and then drove off?
I don't know. I didn't know.
I can't remember if it was at Roscoe's house or Charlie's house. But a group of like Hispanics turned up in a car and were like trying to look in the window, and Jack Reacher was like, what are you guys doing? And then they drove off.
Oh, I forgot about that part. That's right. Yeah. So that happened and it's important. We don't know why yet, but
it happened somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't remember if it was at Charlie's house or Roscoe's house.
Me neither.
He also speaks to
Mr. Kleiner.
Yeah.
Who in my mind is just John Dutton. Yeah.
But less cool.
Yeah, way less cool.
I'm less scared of fucking Mr. Kleiner.
Yeah.
Because he's like, you upset my boy.
Mm-hmm.
And then Reacher says he upset me first, and then Kleiner just goes, and then leaves.
Yeah. It's a very weird interaction.
Thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
John Dutton would have killed him.
Oh, 100%.
And then we learn that Finley's been in contact with the government to find out what his brother was doing down here, and it turns out, long story short, trust me, I'm doing you guys all a favor. Turns out he's with the Treasury Department and looking into counterfeit money.
Well, don't we want to talk for 20 minutes about computer passwords?
No! No! I don't! Also,
it was so boomer. It was 20 minutes of talking about computer passwords and how bad people are at making them.
Yeah. And me, a fucking intellectual, sitting here like, none of my passwords are that. Eat shit, Jack Reacher.
Well, they're all like your pet's name, but I was sitting there like I developed my own code for my passwords. So it did make me feel very superior to listen to this.
Even though this was 1997 when people were still like, this is the era when hackers came out. And,
right.
you know, in hackers, they're like, everybody's the number 1 3 passwords, God, sex, and some other dumb word. I'm like, that's not true. Those are 3 letters. They'll never let any of those. That'll get rejected every time, bro.
Passwords need to be at least 4 characters.
8 these days.
Well, in 97, they probably had to be at least 4.
True. But one of the interesting bits about the fact that Joe Reacher was in Georgia on a counterfeiting bid, like he was investigating counterfeiting. He's like, okay, so is there counterfeiting here? And the lady he was talking about was like, no, we've pretty much stomped that out in the United States. All funny money is made overseas now. And I'm like, that's not true.
Joe Reacher single-handedly finished
Also,
U.S. counterfeit.
Also, the U.S. Treasury Department does not handle that. The Secret Service handles counterfeit money.
But maybe Joe Reacher was just such a special guy, you know. They were
Lee
like, we'll bring you on.
Lee Child is, I'll cut him some slack. He's a British citizen. He doesn't know that the Secret Service handles counterfeit money.
Mm-hmm. And he probably didn't have a man on the inside.
Like Tom Clancy.
Yeah, yeah.
Tom Clancy was secretly the most well-informed person in the government before he died. He took a lot of secrets with him to the grave.
Yeah. Oh, this is around the time where he's like, Roscoe, I need you to get me a gun.
Yeah,
and he brings it up like 3 times. He's like, hey, dude, did you hear me before when I said I needed a gun? She's like, yeah, can get you a gun.
Fuck, man. Okay, it's gonna be. I can't just like go get one for you. And he's like, I need one.
Yeah, and then they aggressively make out in the parking lot. And I think this is when they go on their last, for this group of chapters, morgue field trip, and they get all the deets about
the
Sherman Stalls,
former truck driver, but he hasn't done it in a while because all of the telltale signs of being a truck driver are old.
Yeah, the amount of detail we got about the autopsy was kind of interesting.
The diesel fuel that kind of just permeating a trucker's skin.
His skin for the rest of eternity, but not in the last 9 months when he's been unemployed. I was like, you can tell all that?
I doubt
it. Like, this is the amount of detail we get from like this one autopsy is more than we've gotten about any other part of the crime thus far.
Yeah. But you know what? I'm with it. I like the fact that this is the best medical examiner that has ever been. He's like,
yeah, I'm not mad about it.
That diesel fuel's 6 months.
Yeah.
Turns slightly after 5 months. After the morgue, Reacher goes back to
town. Yeah, to go on a little shopping spree.
Yeah, he needs pants. He needs, because he's a drifter, you know. He's only got one pair of everything. So he's gonna need some new stuff. And Charlie gave him a giant fucking envelope full of money. So he's like, I'm gonna splurge and buy one extra pair of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then he stops in the barbershop again for a shave. And he's like, yeah, the barber is like, you're the last customer I had. And he's like, that was like 5 days ago, bro. And he's like, yeah, that's why I remember. There's been nobody in here. He's like, how do you make money if you have no customers? And then we find out that the Kleiner Foundation, which is doing like this community outreach thing where they like pay businesses in the community to stay in business.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, okay, so your barbershop is part of the outreach thing? And he's like, yeah, $1,000. And he's like, okay, cool, but $1,000 a month is kind of a drop in the bucket. And he goes, no, $1,000 a week. That's kind of where the chapter ends, is the bombshell that this foundation is paying every business in town $1,000 a week to stay in business.
And this family is pretty new to town, right? Like 5 years ago, They show up, but it seems like when we're introduced to them at first, they feel like an institution,
Yeah.
and then we find out why. But it seems like they almost seem like one of the old money families that have been there forever, for generations. But they're new in town, and they set up this foundation. I think they came from money, but then
They had
something happened where they either lost money or they were run out of wherever they were.
They developed
And I can't remember why.
I think they developed a new way to process fabric, question mark.
Okay. That
And
sounds
they
right.
made an absolute fortune on that new method. And then
Mhm.
they moved into a different business, and that fell apart because they got into some trouble with environment stuff, like EPA shit. And then they just
Right.
completely packed everything up and then moved it over to Venezuela, and then the family moved to Margrave.
Right.
And then they've just been throwing mad money around this town.
Mhm. But they're kind of just this mostly we've had very few brief altercations and introductions to these people. And I can only assume they will become more important as
We
the
better get
book
more.
progresses. Mhm.
We're still early.
That's right.
Actually,
We're about halfway, actually. Yeah. Mhm.
But that's it. That's all we got for this week. Next week we're gonna have more though.
That is true.
Rather the week after next.
Right.
That's it for us. Watching guys. I'll have this episode up on YouTube next week today.
Excellent.
So if you're not subscribed there, please do. Link is right down there. And tomorrow, I think we're doing Star Wars.
Yeah.
We're getting back into Star Wars because it's been 3 weeks.
I know. Too long. I'm ready to electrocute more people.
All right, boys and girls. Thanks. And we'll see you 2 weeks from now. Bye, everybody.
Bye.